Welcome to my channel. As a layperson, I like to share my understanding of Scripture. Today I'm looking at Galatians chapter 5, and I've entitled it, Fruit of the Spirit or Deeds of the Flesh. In chapter 4 of Galatians, we see how the Galatians, in verse 8, went from not knowing God and being slaves to those which by nature are no God, that they came to knowing God by keeping His Torah, which took them out of slavery, and then they reverted back to the weak and worthless religious traditions of men. This goes back to Israel. The Israelites went from not knowing God as slaves in Egypt to freedom and entered into agreement to follow Him by keeping His instructions, and then back to slavery by setting up the golden calf worship. In verse 1, chapter 5, we read, "The Messiah set us free from the religious systems of men. So stand firm and don't go back to being a slave to that system. If your hope is in your man-made religious system and you're seeking to be justified by keeping a law that is not from God, you have departed from grace and you have disobeyed the truth which can only come from God." In verse 5, "When we are faithful to the truth and guided by the Spirit to grow in righteousness in Yeshua the Messiah," it doesn't matter if you're a Jew or Gentile, but it does matter that we love our neighbors as ourselves. And so, whether a Jew or Gentile, they're free to associate with each other. One doesn't have to segregate himself from another. And verse 9 says, "A little leaven leavens the whole lump. Even a little bit of false teaching by men will result in spreading throughout the congregation, and the people start to bite and devour one another. Then instead of walking by the Spirit and the instructions of the Torah, they carry out the desires of the flesh." And verse 17 states, "The desire of the flesh is immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger, disputes, factions, envyings, drunkenness, and carousing. Those who practice such things shall not inherit the kingdom." In verse 22, we read, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." In verse 24, it states, "Those who belong to Messiah Yeshua, they walk by the Spirit," that is, God's instructions from above, "and they put to death the desires of the flesh." You need to reject the teachings of men that will lead to all the false desires of the flesh. Thank you for watching. If you liked what you heard, share with someone. If not, share with everyone.